Hello there, creatives. Welcome back to another session in our writing marathon series. I'm so excited to talk to you today about what we're doing. We're talking about writing sprints, and this is just such a fun exercise and a way to mix up your writing routine and incorporate some new things that I think will really help you in the long run. But first of all, if you're new here, I'm Shannon. This is the Story Scene where we come together to help you write bold, brilliant, and beautiful stories. And yeah, that's what we're doing today. We are talking about how to move the ball forward on your writing progress by incorporating what I call writing sprints. So let's talk about that first, right? Let's talk about what a sprint is. What do I even mean by that? And we're doing this in the context of our writing marathon series, which means we're kind of using this metaphor of like training for a running marathon, like a race, right? And I mentioned in the first video in the series that when you do a training plan like that, it tends to mix up the training plan. So you're not just doing these really, really long runs all the time. We might think if you're trying to train for a marathon, you're going to be out there running 3, 5, 6, 7, 9 miles a day. No, no, no. You have to build up other muscles. You have to spend some time doing recovery. And so that's kind of the model that we're working with here. This is the equivalent of doing some speed training if you were training for a marathon. And the reason why that's so important is because it develops certain skills as a runner. It develops your mindset, it develops your strength, your endurance. It helps you to become more aware of the different gears that you have, the ability that you have to accelerate, decelerate, control your pace, things like that. And I think this is really applicable to our work as writers, actually, because we may not realize it, but we actually do have a lot of gears that we can draw on when we are working on a particular project. So let's talk a little bit about what I mean by that word sprint. What do I mean by that? I mean working under a time constraint that makes you feel uncomfortable. Okay, because that's what a sprint is. Let's face it. What a sprint is, if you go outside and you say, okay, I'm going to run to the end of the block and I'm going to run as hard and as fast as I can, it's going to make you uncomfortable. It's going to. If you're going all out and you're going as fast as you can, it will make you uncomfortable. And that's not a bad thing, right? And so a sprint for a writer is putting yourself under a time constraint that makes you feel like you're under the gun a little bit, like you're under some pressure. This could be you set a timer for yourself for 10, 20, 30 minutes and you go as far and as fast as you can through whatever project you happen to be working on, right? So that's sort of a self-inflicted deadline, if you will, something that you're working on, right? But it could also be setting a delivery deadline with some accountability that is pretty aggressive for what you normally would do. Things like NaNoWriMo are examples of how, this gets incorporated into a fun kind of gamified context, right? So we all get together and we say, okay, let's write a novel in a month. Writing a novel in a month, if you stop and think about it, is kind of a crazy proposition. I saw a number of screenwriting websites that kind of put up on Instagram challenges of write your feature in 14 days. And I actually love this. And I want to incorporate this towards the end of our marathon training and see if we can't do that, write a feature in 14 days. And it has a little training plan there for you and everything. So that's, again, something that is putting you under a time constraint. Like we don't normally sit down to write a feature film script in 14 days, right? That's just not something we would normally do. We don't sit down to write a novel in a month. That's not something we would normally do. And it requires a certain level of dedication and commitment to that kind of time frame. And it's going to make you uncomfortable because being consistent and driving towards that goal requires certain things of you that puts you in a different gear, as I said earlier, than you would probably normally be operating under, right? Another great example and something else that looks like a ton of fun. I haven't tried it myself yet, but would love to do at some point is something like a 24 or 48-hour film challenge. And if you've done one of those, if you've done any of these, NaNoWriMo, do a feature in 14 days, or do a 24 or 48-hour film challenge, please leave me a comment. I would love to hear about your experience doing one of these and how you felt like it really changed your game as far as other projects that you do in the future, because that's one of the things that I really do believe is that putting yourself through something like this is going to have long lasting benefits. And that's one of the reasons why, we're kind of talking about 5 reasons why we're going to try doing this and incorporate this maybe into our weekly routine as writers is because I do think that it has long lasting benefits for us as far as building our endurance and our resiliency. So, let's get right into then these 5 reasons why we should try um, adding writing sprints into our writing routine. So, reason number one, get comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? Let's say that again. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. I love this one, right? So, why is this such an important skill? Um, in part, I think because what are we training for? If you're a new and emerging writer and you're just getting started, you probably have as a goal being a working writer. That means you are getting writing assignments, you are being hired and being paid money, real money, right, to do the thing that you love to do, that is like breathing to you, right? But you are making a living doing it. And the reality is, especially, in the film industry, that you don't always get to control the conditions under which you're working. In other words, you might get assigned a project and have a very quick turnaround time, right? Something that would massively stress you out, right? If this is something that you were doing to yourself, this is why we're practicing this, because when we get comfortable with being uncomfortable, um, it helps us to develop the resilience that we need in order to take on those kinds of projects. You're like, oh, I've done that before, right? I've done a rewrite in 48 hours. Like I did that film project thing. It was super fun, and I had to write, for 48 hours. I had to turn this thing around. I had to do this project. I had to make that happen. Or I did turn around a feature in 14 days. I was able to actually pull that off. Um, you might have NaNoWriMo, and you say, okay, well, I was able to write a novel in a month. I can do this, right? So you see what happens is that you've developed a confidence about the discomfort that would normally be associated with a deadline like that. You're like, oh, I've done that before. I can handle that. That's yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable. Yeah, I'm going to be pulling some really, really long hours, but I know that I can do this. I have done it before. I've seen this. I know what it looks like. I know what it feels like, and I can do it, right? So the whole idea behind getting comfortable with being uncomfortable is that it sets you up for down the line for a situation, a professional situation that you may not be able to control, and somebody wants you to turn a rewrite around in 2 days. Somebody wants you to rewrite a scene for the next day. You finish shooting and you got to go, redo something for the next day. You don't know, right? But practicing those types of situations, right, this is how we train, this is how we get better, and we prepare ourselves then to deal with those situations when they do come. You might see an opportunity, another scenario where this might help you out. You might see an opportunity that's just too good to pass up, but it's going to require you to turn something around really, really quickly. Again, you have the confidence, you know what it looks like, you know what it feels like, you know you can pull it off. And so you can feel confident taking a stab at that opportunity, right? And taking a chance on it. So it's about developing resilience, mindset, and confidence, right? Getting comfortable with being uncomfortable is about resiliency and mindset more than anything else. And it's about training yourself that you know you can handle whatever is going to get thrown at you. You're fairly confident that you'll be able to handle it, or you'll figure it out, because you figured it out before. Okay, so that's reason number one. Is it just helps us with that mindset. It helps us with the courage and the resiliency, to be able to take on those professional challenges, eventually, right? And again, the beautiful thing about this is, and one of the things that I hope you're starting to take away from these lessons is that we can actually train for these things. We can actually forecast some of this and put in the work now before we get put in a situation that really puts us into discomfort, right? As far as being a challenging situation, we can do that ahead of time. We can train for that. If we can kind of forecast what might be coming, we can prepare, and that's the really good news. The really good news is that we are able to do that. Okay, so what's another reason why we might want to try putting ourselves under a time constraint that makes us feel uncomfortable as our writing part of our writing routine. Reason number two, this helps us short circuit decision paralysis, right? Short circuiting decision paralysis. What do I mean by decision paralysis? Let me know if you've ever experienced that situation where you've been working on a project and you just sort of hit a wall and you're not sure what you should do next and you just stop, right? And you kind of wrestle with these different options and you do, like you're just not sure which direction you're supposed to go. And it gets really difficult to make any forward progress whatsoever. And all you basically just shut down, right? Um, but what happens when you're under a time constraint, right, is that you must make a decision. It in a way, it doesn't matter what decision you make. You just have to make one because the pages have to get written. You must move forward. The story has to get done. Get it on the page, right? Just move, get it on the page, make a decision, go with it, and keep going, right? That is how that ends up working, right? So when we see that kind of situation, but doing a writing sprint where you're putting yourself under that kind of constraint, um you just have to make a choice. And one of the things I think this helps us to realize is that decisions aren't fatal. They're not permanent, they're not fatal. You can fix it in a rewrite, you can go back. It's not going to be the end of the world if you make a wrong move. On page 10, you can go back and fix it, right? It's just getting over that. I think sometimes we feel that if we make the wrong choice, the whole project is going to fall apart. And maybe not, but as I always say, everything can be fixed in the rewrite, right? The getting the first draft done is so much about just kind of doing whatever you need to do to get the story on the page, right? You just make the decisions you have to make, you move forward, and that's just how it goes, right? That's just how it goes. So again, it's a little bit about confidence, and it's a little bit about releasing the stakes that you're putting on yourself, that every decision that you make has so much writing on it that it's the end of the world if you make the wrong choice. No, you just make a choice and you go with it. And yeah, maybe in the next scene or two you've written yourself into a corner. Well, then you backtrack and you make another choice and you move forward, right? But you've learned something. You would never learn that if you didn't make the mistake, right? So freeing ourselves to make decisions quickly, to be okay with making a mistake and realizing that it's going to be okay and that we can go back and we can fix it in the rewrite and it's going to be fine. It's huge, right? It's huge because again, like I said, so much of the issue sometimes when we hit this paralysis or we hit this feeling of resistance, um, writer's block, right, is really putting ourselves in a situation where we feel like the stakes are so high and there's so much riding on every decision. And I think that, again, one of the advantages of this kind of speed writing, um, is that it is, yeah, Calvin, I love that. Hog tying the inner editor. I love it. Yes, yes, you just silence it. Nope, not listening, right? We're not listening at all. We're just going to move forward, and we're not going to listen to that second guessing voice that really just stops our progress forward. Um, and I love the idea too that action often, and not sitting there and thinking about things, brings clarity, right? Make a decision, go forward, see what happens, see what comes out of it, brings a lot of clarity, right? And that is huge when we're talking about just making forward progress on a project. So that's another really great advantage, I think, to doing these speed writing sessions. You train yourself, yes, to shut off the inner editor while you're writing. You just make the decision, you go forward. There will be time. You say, inner editor, I love you, but there is time. There's time for you to have your say after we're done. After we're done with whatever we're doing here, and it's time to go back and do the rewrite, it's time to go back and do some edits. That's when you are, sort of allowing that critical voice to emerge. But for now, we're just going to make some decisions and we're just going to go with it. And if it's a mistake, it's a mistake, and we learn and we fix it and we move on, and it's going to be fine. Okay, so what about another reason? Reason number three, accelerate your progress. I love this one because, and it kind of goes along with reason number two, because sometimes what happens is, right, we get stuck on a project and it feels like everything is shut down and we sit there and nothing happens and the word counter does not move and the page counter doesn't move, and it gets very depressing, right? As a writer, we're like, we're not doing anything, we're not making progress. um so setting yourself, I'm going to write for 15 minutes and I don't care what kind of drivel comes out, I'm just going to write something, and you get that boost of confidence back, like, oh yeah, I can actually do this thing, I can actually sit here at the keyboard and I can put words on a page, like it's going to happen. And you just sort of force yourself through that, and it's a big boost of confidence if you've been feeling like, I can't do this, if that's the sort of mantra that you've been saying in your mind, I just can't do this, I can't write this project, I just can't blah blah blah. Throw that out too, along with your inner editor. No, no more I can't. No, you are doing, you are writing. And the surest answer to I can't is I am, right? I am doing the thing. And so that is a big boost. And then when you actually do see that you are making progress forward, that builds some momentum and you can get back into your positive creative flow. Sometimes I think as writers we just need a little bit of encouragement, we just need to see that something is happening, something is working, we're making that forward progress, and it's going to all work out. So again, just setting a timer for 30 minutes and you just write, and maybe it doesn't, again, inner editor has nothing to say about this, so you just put a scene on the page, get something on there, and you have just broken through, right? You've just broken through, as I said, the I can't with the I am. And I think that is a huge thing. And accelerating your progress, sometimes we need, like I said, just we need to feel like we're making that progress forward. And the confidence goes a really long, long way. Okay, another great advantage to doing these, reason number four, you're going to surprise yourself. You're going to surprise yourself. This is one of my favorite reasons why I used to hate speed training as a runner. I hated it for the longest time because I had the I can't script in my head. And then I started to realize that I actually really did like speed training because I was surprising myself. And it's kind of nice when you surprise yourself, right? And here's why you surprise yourself, because we spend much of our time sitting in our comfort zone, which is probably roughly about 70 to 80% effort, if that, right? Probably actually less than that. It's probably like 50 to 60%. Like if we're being super honest with ourselves, we probably like really aren't working that hard, right? That aggressively. So and we don't know. See, this goes back to what I was saying earlier. We're not aware always of the different gear settings that we have, of like, what are you actually capable of? Like if you were to go full out, what would you be capable of? We don't often realize what that is if you've never tried to put yourself in this situation. You don't know what you're actually capable of yet. You don't know what a 10 out of 10 effort looks like because you've never pushed that hard, right? You think, oh, my 5 is a 10. No, you've got a lot more left in the tank. You just got to get there. You got to push yourself, right? So we don't realize what we're truly capable of until we kind of put ourselves under maximum pressure and go full out and just see what happens, right? Just see what you can do. And you will, I promise you, you will surprise yourself with this. You will surprise yourself. We really do think a lot of times that the comfort zone, the effort that we put in on a daily basis is our 100% all out effort, but um, most often this is true across the board, whether you're talking about athletes or you're talking about just life in general, that we don't tend to give the 100%. We tend to like shortcut that a little bit, right? We tend to kind of undercut ourselves a little bit. So setting yourself a goal of pushing yourself way outside of your comfort zone, either because you have to, um, like you are actually on a deadline that you must deliver something, or you are, just putting in that red line effort, you're finding out where your maximum is. And that helps you to then calibrate the rest of those gears, as I say, to know like, hey, I could step up my game. I could actually be doing more on a daily basis. And that's that is a lovely feeling, actually, to realize that, like, hey, I've got a lot more. Like, I could do this. Going back to my earlier point about the confidence, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. When you know what your 10 out of 10 effort is and you know how long you can sustain something like that, huge boost of confidence. Huge. Because then you know what you're truly capable of. And the other thing is, here's the other beautiful thing, right? The more we do this, the more effort we can put in and the easier it's going to feel, right? Okay, so this is the other thing. It's sort of like as you get into shape. I love the saying, like, someday, my workout will be my warm up. It's exactly that principle. It's exactly that principle. So the more we do this, the more we kind of ratchet ourselves up and we push ourselves to that 10 out of 10 effort, the farther that line goes, right? The further out we can push, the more we can push ourselves, because we're training ourselves endurance wise to be able to give that kind of effort. It's really, really awesome. Again, going back to my point that, like, sometimes I think as writers, we're not aware that we can actually train this stuff. We can actually work on these kinds of skills. We can actually do something about this. We don't have to stay, at 1,000 words a day. Then it takes me 2 hours to do that. No, I don't have to stay at that place. I can actually train myself to write faster, and write more efficiently in the same amount of time, right? That's kind of what we're going for here. And that brings me to the last reason why I love this training so much. And that is that we're going to work on improving our overall efficiency. Okay. So this is the big long-term gain, is exactly what I've been saying, that once we know how far and how fast we really are able to go, it's leveling everything else up, right? And we're going to level up our daily routine. Even when we're not going for that 10 effort, our 5 effort, is now going to feel like a 4, right? And so we can give more, because we've got the endurance, we've got the resilience, we've got all of those things in place. Our mindset's where it needs to be. We know we can handle writer's block. We know we can handle resistance, because we're like, we're just going to make a decision. We're just going to go with it, whatever. Like, inner editor, go away. Like, we're just going to make some decisions. We've trained ourselves to know what to do in those situations, and it's going to have those gains across the board. This is so awesome. This is why HIT training is so popular, right? And why it's so effective. It's because it puts you in your body into sort of like a heightened state where it's like it's still working out even after you stopped working out. It's kind of the same idea that the when you put in this kind of effort, it lasts beyond the session itself. It lasts beyond that time when, like, hey, I was under the gun for a deadline and I wrote 25 pages in 6 hours or whatever it was. And I know I can do that. So that has now, like, leveled up everything. When you kind of find out, again, like, you find out where your red line is, you can level everything up, right? And so when you do have the luxury of an hour or two to kind of relax and write and just sort of be, then yeah, you can produce more with less effort, and you're more efficient that way, right? You can take, instead of 1,000 words in an hour, you're doing something else. You're writing more. You're doing 1,200 words, 1,300 words, 2,000 words, depends on the situation, right? And as I said, if you run into a block, you know what to do. You have the mindset tools now to deal with that, right? So, to kind of wrap this all up, right? 5 reasons why we should kind of incorporate this sort of speed training, that is putting ourselves under a time deadline that feels uncomfortable, that puts us out of our normal comfort zone, forces us to make those decisions rapidly, um, helps us to build that mindset, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable because we're training for something down the line that's not here yet. We're training for a professional situation that's not here yet, but we can sort of anticipate. We're like, I'm going to be ready when it gets here. This is why we train. This is why, everybody trains, for something that's coming. And you have that confidence boost of knowing that you're capable of producing efficiently and effectively, under those kinds of constraints. It's a great feeling. And as I said, it really helps us to realize that we are able to train the skill of being a writer. Writing is an art. There's so much about creativity, and we talk about flow, and we want to be like in the zone, and we want to have inspiration, and we want to, all of that. Yes, all that's great. But if we're professional writers, we can't wait for the muse to descend. If we're under a deadline and we have to produce something, or somebody's going to get very angry and they're not going to pay us our money, right? We can't. There's that, give and take of like, muse, you're going to do what I tell you to do because we've trained for this, right? You don't have to wait around for it to show up. You are in control of that, right? You are in control of what's going on there. So you can absolutely train yourself to work more efficiently and effectively. It's one of those things that I've spent a lot of time over the last long time developing, right? Because just the way my life is, I've had to write in the margins for forever, right? I have very limited amounts of time. And so I've had to learn how to train myself to write. If I have 5 minutes, I'm going to make it count. If I have 20 minutes, I'm going to make it count, right? And I'm going to do a whole series of videos on what you can write if you only have 5 minutes. What can you write if you only have 10 minutes, right? Because sometimes we think, oh, that I can't do anything with that, right? But again, if we're comfortable with being uncomfortable and we know we can produce something, it opens up the margins for real productivity in really exciting ways, right? So let's think about this in sort of a numbers way. Also, I've heard a number of professional writers say that they're, I think Ray Bradbury says this, maybe Stephen King also, that their habit is 1,000 words a day, every single day, 365, right? 1,000 words a day. It's 365,000 words a year, which is 3, 4, 5 novels, depending on how long your novels tend to be, right? What if we could increase our productivity and our efficiency by just 10%, right? Just 10% better every day. It's going from 1,000 words to 1,100 words a day, which when you think about it, an extra 100 words is like, what? Not even that much. It's like a Facebook post or an Instagram post. That's like nothing, right? 100 words is not a whole lot, actually. But over the course of a year, you've taken your productivity overall from 365,000 words to 401,500 words, right? Which is basically the equivalent of an extra novella, or halfway through another novel. That's huge. That's just 100 extra words a day, 100 extra words a day, 10% better. What if you went from 5 pages, 5 script pages to 5.5 pages a day? Same math, right? Same thing. You're going to end up with finishing more projects. You're going to, have that kind of increased productivity. It's a habit, it's a discipline. But if we can just boost ourselves just a little bit each day, the gains are huge. The gains are huge, right? So that's partly what we're doing here too, right? We're looking for that, getting 10% better, getting just a little bit better each and every day. And doing that consistently will have huge dividends over time, right? Just that little bit of extra. And again, like I said, I think one of the things that this can also teach us is that little amounts of progress, incremental, consistent, incremental progress over time means huge things in the long run, right? It's like compounding interest or whatever. It is huge. It absolutely makes a difference. It absolutely will make a difference, right? We think, oh my God, 100 words, like, come on. 100 words is nothing, like, that's nothing. Yeah, but 100 words over 365 days is a lot of some things, right? That's a lot. That's 36,000 words. That's a lot. That's a lot. It adds up, right? So that's by way of encouragement, that don't discard the small things, the small progress, the little bit of improvement. It really does make a difference, and it does add up over time if you're able to do it consistently and you just develop the habit. It's, and we're all working on that. I'm not sitting over here saying, oh yes, I've perfected the art, right? No, we're all works in progress, right? But we're all striving to do just a little bit better each day. And so writing sprints, one of the ways we can do a little bit better each day and train ourselves for what's not here yet, for what's maybe 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the line. That's okay. That's okay. We'll be ready when we get there, right? We will be ready when we get there because we have put in the training now, and we're seeing the payoff now because we're writing more efficiently, we're writing more effectively, we're getting more projects done, which means we're learning faster, which means we're improving faster, which means we shorten the distance to our overall goal, right? It's a win-win-win every which way. And so I really just want to encourage you all to give this a go, right? Give this a try. Try putting yourself under a time constraint. Try putting yourself under a deadline that's uncomfortable. Let's do. I mentioned to my email list. And if you're not on my email list, you can go to thestoryscene.com and get signed up. But I mentioned to my email list that I want to do write a feature in 14 days, and I think I mentioned it earlier in this video. I want to do a write with me. Let's do a feature in 14 days when we're done with our marathon training, and let's see what we are able to do. Let's see if we can pull it off. I find that to be a challenge. I think that would be a challenging thing, right? But so great to do it, and so great to see if we can do it. And even if we don't quite finish, see, this is the thing too with NaNoWriMo, right? Even if you don't finish, you're now 50 pages into a script when you wouldn't have even probably been on page 5 if you hadn't pushed yourself, right? You're 30,000 words into a novel when you would have been in chapter 1 if you hadn't pushed yourself, right? Again, a benefit of doing this is that it accelerates your progress, it gives you that confidence, it forces you to make those decisions. It's just a great way all the way around to train. So what is coming up next week? So next week we're going to continue on. I want to shift gears a little bit in our training session for next week, and I want to talk a little bit about recovery and refilling the creative well. So we're going to talk a little bit about, because that's another important aspect of any kind of training for the long run. For being able to do this as a career that lasts a lifetime, you need the endurance, and that means we need to spend time refilling the creative well. And I think so often as writers, we just push and push and push, and we're talking about pushing today. We're talking about maxing it out. Well, you can't do a 10 out of 10 all the time, right? It's meant to be a balance. It's meant to be a balance. We push hard and we see how far we can go, and then we kind of scale back and we recover, and then we can do it again. We can push a little harder the next time, right? But it's an ebb and flow. It's not a just go 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 all the time, because that's the recipe for burnout, right? And if you're an athlete, that's the recipe for injury. So we're going to talk a little bit about recovery next week. We're going to talk about some fun ways, what Einstein used to call analogous play, how to refill the creative well, how to deal with writer's block in a different way than sort of what we talked about today, of just silencing the inner critic and making decisions is one way of dealing with it. Analogous play is another. And so we're going to talk about that next week. So I hope you'll join me. We will be back on our normal time at Tuesday, noon Central next week for our live on analogous play and recovery. So I hope you do join me then. But until then, I hope you have a great writing weekend, and to your success, have a great time writing and being creative. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.